And as we say, in Vaishnav, especially those who believe in Bal Vaishnav, the darshan times are very limited, 10 minutes, half an hour and all. So I have seen when I was especially a child, my mother going through the market and would ask somebji, darshan chalu che ji, darshan che, they would use. The same way, while the politician is listening, while the government is listening, let us look at this opening to put before the government really what is tax terrorism. Because tax terrorism, what they understand is a retrospective amendment of section 91A, the Vodafone. Now what are those? Those are foreign investors. Foreign investors, when they don't like your country, they don't like your tax regime, they run away. That is what they have done. And therefore you want them back. The government wants them back. That is the reason the government is constantly talking of tax terrorism. Tax terrorism is otherwise not going to make any difference to us citizens of this country. It is going to make a difference only for those foreign investors because they have gone away. We want them, the government wants them back for their achhe din, and that's why they are talking of tax terrorism. But because they are talking and they are listening, this thought came up that why not look at tax terrorism plain and simple only for residents. The poor resident Indian who does not have the wherewithal to run away, he is going to be in India whether you tax him or don't tax him, or you terrorize him or don't terrorize him. We look at those provisions. We don't look at the provisions. Those are also there, but they have their lobbies. The government is already listening. The next day, the finance secretary says that don't worry, GAR, we have not said anything, but there is still time for GAR to be applied because they are telling the investors, please sir, don't go away. They are not going to tell us, you, me, anybody. We, the poor, are always suffering what they are doing, and therefore looking at tax terrorism as a subject for resident Indians. The second restriction that we have decided, I am going to keep myself restricted to that, and that is we are not going to talk of administrative terror. There is an administrative terror, the way they administer those laws, because that is also change or improvement is outside the scope. Let us look at tax terrorism as enacted by law. As enacted by the law that the government is speaking, the law that they are passing, we will try to understand tax terrorism as applicable to residents and terrorism. It is very easy to say terrorism. Really speaking, when I made a little deep study, I realized that really the correct word is terror. Terror means to frighten. Terrorism and terror 40 years back were really synonyms. You could use it either way. But in 40 years, terrorism has taken a different color, and that is a criminal act to terrorize. That is what is now classified as terrorism. Otherwise, the word used is terror. So we will also, because there is no criminal act, it's ultimately the law of the country that they are talking of. We will use the word tax terror rather than terrorism. Minor difference, but it has a difference. That means what we are looking at is terror. It's very easy. As I said, one side is this, the other side. As we have this, when we talk of tax terror, in fact, even a single rupee of tax to be paid, nobody is going to like it. We have, this very famous saying attributed to Chanakya, attributed to Vedvyas. Let us look at the saying. The saying says, the king should behave like bees who collect honey without causing harm to the tree. They say this should be the benchmark for the government. But collect taxes like bees collect it from the flower. Very simple, very beautiful. Sounds very good when you are advising the government. But we also have an interesting story. Again, as people say it is Akbar Birbal, but it can be anything. It is valid even today. That Akbar asked Birbal that how many people in my country my kingdom are honest or smart. We can look at it different way. Birbal said, there is no honest person. He said, how? He said, very simple, let us dig a pit and give out a rule that every person in the night is going to put a glass of milk in that pit. But in the night, nobody is going to watch over you, nothing. It's just that there will be a token at the pit. Pick up that token that you have come there and poured milk there. In the morning, what they find is only water. And therefore, very easy to say that government should act as bee. But at the same time, if it acts as bee, you will find that there are no taxes collected because everybody will think, I will only add water, what difference does it make? Everybody does milk. So really, government has a very strong balancing act to do. On the one side, we say collect taxes with smile. The other side is also a fact that if you smile, people are not going to pay. So strength and all those things are also required. So really, what are the criteria on the basis of which I decided, I am using specifically because there can be a difference of opinion, that we can say a particular provision is a terror provision. Because somebody has to test those. How are we going to say the act, which provision is terror? According to me, it can be a terror. Retrospective, my chairman has already said that if it's a retrospective amendment, it's terror, but I would not say per se, because yes, government needs the right occasionally to do retrospective, but yes, I would put it retrospective along with 4 more criteria. A provision which creates a sense of cheated in the SSC, in the taxpayer. That is, say for example, you look at an ad of a car which says 7% rate of interest, but it has a small asterisk. We see all those kinds of ads. The moment you took this loan or otherwise you go and talk to them, you realize that the rate of interest is 7 is a minimal thing. It's a misnomer. The correct rate of interest is something totally different. It can be something 28, 32% also. You feel cheated. Now what SSC is dealing with is government. Whenever we'll take those provisions, whenever the SSC feels, whenever a taxpayer will feel that I have been cheated by the government, then yes, it's a terror provision. And there are quite a few of these which cheat you. Clearly you feel that cheat, it's only that we don't have these forums to say this. Ultimately you go to tribunal, you go to high court, you go file a bill, you challenge constitutionally, they are going to say, you being cheated is no ground for it to say to be constitutionally, that's only a feeling. But yes, you do feel cheated. And therefore, I would say the first criteria to decide whether a provision is terror or not, according to me, is that it creates a sense of cheating. Second is where the provision is very, very onerous responsibility. It puts up a responsibility on you which is uncalled for as a citizen. Why should I take this responsibility? And there are quite a few such provisions when we come to it. The third, the most crucial, I would say, which is where the government is missing out at least in the last decade or so, and that is assessing an income which you don't think is your income. You may charge me 30%, but if you are deciding my income, what is my income, then it doesn't make sense. Okay, it's not that only the SSC is right, but there are standards. Business is carried on since thousands of years. You know what is income of a business. Now you want to change that criteria that no, it is the person who sits in the north block is going to decide what is your income, then yes, there is something wrong with your provisions. You want to tax me 40%, please go ahead and do it, I would say. But don't cheat me by saying tax is 2%, but you say your income is 100, we are going to say your income is 2000. Senseless. Please tax me what you feel appropriate, but don't change my income. Let the income be what is commercially income. So I would say terror when a provision changes the definition of income as commercially known. And last, where the same amount of revenue can be collected in a more human manner, why you want to do it otherwise? You all must have heard this anecdote, especially it happens people when they say I'm going to travel by road in north. They say be careful in nights. Why? You will be robbed? No, that is not the problem. You will be robbed 100% after 6 o'clock if you are driving on a road, a village road or something. Problem is those people say, you say, okay, le lo sab, ye mera ghadi, mobile, purse, you even take my car, I'm going out. They will say, nahi, hum muft mein nahi le sakte, hum aapko pehle marenge. This is a fact. Many times you will find, we'll take up those provisions, that provisions are such that no, we are going to hit you first, then we'll take that tax. We'll make you feel sorry for it, then we'll take the tax. This, I would say, are the 4 criteria I could identify where one can say a provision is tax terror. Now let us look at how they do it. Which are those provisions? The reason why we decided to do this, Institute decided to do this is first and foremost, first time after a really very long time, you see a provision which is pro-SSC and distinctly so. They have done it, I can assure you, because this we were asking for many years, was not happening. It has happened. It is a politician doing it. What is that provision? We had registration charitable trusts, they say are exempt from tax. Now what is the government doing? Is it giving them any favor? Do you think charitable trusts are being done any favor by the government by doing exempt? No. It is not an exemption provision. It says if you are a charitable trust and you satisfy these criteria, you are doing something which the government has failed to do and therefore will not tax you. This is the first and foremost psychological test they are playing by saying that we are giving you a favor and exemption. What are they saying when they are giving corporate social responsibility? That please share the burden of the government. Now when we are sharing the burden of the government, some people are doing it exclusively. Only that, they say, no, we are doing a favor to you by giving an exemption. Sorry. The first and foremost is that those provisions are basically meant to give an exemption, saying that we are not going to touch you. And this is not only in this country. You go to USA, look at the law in USA, US code. Religious trusts there are called church status. And church doesn't mean only Christianity. Even a Hindu trust can be registered there in a church status. Not only it is exempt, beyond up to a particular limit it is exempt from filing a return. It is exempt from a scrutiny assessment. We are talking of a country like United States which knows very well what it is doing. We are a different country, we think we are better, and we make issues out of exemption to charitable trusts. Yes, there are trusts which are misusing it, but they know which are those trusts. They don't want to act against them. You cannot create laws for few bad apples, don't apply it to them, and you apply it to the good trusts. So the first and foremost trust. Now what happens? There was always a provision till 2007 that whenever a trust comes in the notice of the income tax department, it could make an application for registration. The DI will decide, okay, you are a good trust, you are doing your job, now you have come to notice, please take your exemption retrospective. It could be given retrospective. 2007 they decided, no, we don't want to. So they removed the power of retrospective. And they found suddenly that there are really genuine trusts doing really good job. They don't know what is government, they don't know what is account, they don't know what is income tax. Go to Chhattisgarh, go to Jharkhand, they are part of India. Don't look at only Bombay, Delhi. Don't look at the metro cities. There are genuine trusts working there, collecting donations, doing work. They don't know what is books, they don't know what is income tax. Suddenly they get caught, and having been caught, then they say, no, we cannot give you exemption for pass. So they brought in this amendment, and this is a typical bureaucratic amendment. Earlier law before 2007, it was a DI who decided whether you got a retrospective registration. Now what will happen? The DI will give you registration prospective. It is the assessing officer who will decide whether it is retrospective or not by applying 148, because 148 cannot be done only on the ground not registered. He will find some other ground. We know how they write the reasons for reopening. He will write some other ground for doing it. What was the need? You just removed the whole amendment. You are not going to doing any favor to charitable trusts. Now they come up with the theory that depreciation and capital asset are two separate things. Please read those judgments, Bombay High Court and others, which gave that exemption. What is depreciation? We chartered accountants understand very well. Appreciation is not an outgoing. It is a manner of keeping aside funds so that is not used in your day-to-day life. So to the extent of replacement cost of your plant and machinery, you have kept out receipt so you don't use it. Now what is one of the criteria for exemption for a charitable trust? It spends 85% of its income. Now when you want him to spend his 85%, you want him to spend even the depreciation part, so he doesn't have money for replacement. You understand this? They are not looking at it. They are saying we are giving you double deduction. Go to hell, you are not going double deduction. I feel like, frankly telling you, I feel a chartered accountant when I look at a trust that what we are really doing is that we get a beggar at the door in the car. He asks for money, we give him 2 rupees note and say, well, give me 1 lakh rupee. What are you doing? Why are you looking in the bowl of a beggar? Even if you are giving away double deduction, what business you have to look there? They are spending money. It is a terror. It is surely a terror when you say that depreciation will not be considered when we do this, will not consider this when we consider. You are giving exemption to him because saying I will not touch you. Today the criteria for scrutiny assessment ensures that every mid-level trust is getting scrutiny assessment. This is how they really do it, but as I said, will not go to administration, will look at only the provisions of law. So I would say as far as charitable trusts are concerned, one is the registration part has to be retrospective. You are not doing any favor. The second, give him the depreciation. The third and most crucial, till date not used much, but there is something in section 13. It says that a charitable trust after I think 1969 or so has to be either a wholly charitable trust or a wholly religious trust. That means there cannot be a partly religious and partly religious. In the Eastern philosophy, whichever religion you look at it in East, whether Muslims, Islams, Hindus, you look at Sikhs, anybody, the religious tenets say that every person will donate a particular percentage of his income every year. So when a person in the East is donating, it is doing charity, but there is religion in it. And when a religious trust, a temple trust collects crores of rupees of donation, it does charity. It uses the money for the trust, but it also does charity by education and feeding the poor. These are the two basic things any religious trust in country is doing. So there is religion in charity, there is charity in religion. How can you say it has to be wholly charity and wholly religious? It's a different matter. Administration is not doing it very seriously, but this is a fact. How can you have a provision which makes no sense in this country? Just because you come up with a thought of a wholly religious and a wholly charitable trust, impact of this not felt till date, but this is a provision which needs to go. The last thing they came up with, 85, where you are charging your fees and all. Frankly speaking, all of us, quite a few of us are feeling even something like chamber cannot get this because of this fees cut. Say amendment of section 215, where you say that you are rendering any service by charging a fees and all. Now who are these people? They are the people forming opinion. They are the people generating opinion. Why you want to silence them? You can't treat them, don't like them, ideas, okay. Why do you want to silence them? What is the purpose? I really frankly telling you, if there are certain bad trusts, you can deal it by investigation. There is no need to change the law for them. Now let us look at the other provisions which are tax terror. Very, very, very interesting. DDT they came up with, now they have come up with a thought that suddenly they realize that actually it is a tax of shareholder which is the company is paying. If you understand their logic, you look at the example also, Gautam explained it very well. They are saying that earlier if 100 rupees dividend was given, 15 rupees tax would have been paid by the shareholder, he enjoyed 85. Today if company gives him 85 rupees, you should have charged him tax on 100 because that 15 was tax, so you gross it up. Now I would only say please bring a retrospective amendment in your act and say that section 1038 exempt yes, but actually it has been taxed. All your controversies of 14A will go away. If you are ready to accept that DDT tax is a tax of the shareholder which the company is paying, please say that in the act. You will not have 14A because 14A says dividend being exempt, all your disallowance will happen. You have charged me 30% for it, exempt 7.5% that Gautam is saying. If you are saying this is terror. This is what you are cheating me. One way you are saying this is the money I am taking because I have to tax you on dividend, but when it comes to 14A, when it comes to MAT, they are going to say no, you are not paid tax, you pay tax on that again. This is where that sense of cheating comes in. This is where the whole mess comes up. That be transparent, be clear what you want. Just that you can collect a tax in a particular way. This is, I would say, tax terror. Unfortunately, what has happened is in the year 2005 or so, the government was sold out to the idea that 30% is the rate of tax. Companies as well, I think 2005 they made companies also 30% rate of tax. So you became the biggest person who has changed the economy and you have done this and that 30%. With this 30%, what have you done? You have kept that 30% and you did two things. See, ultimately in the budget you don't write the rates, you have to write the amount. So you say 22,000 or a few lakh crores is the collection from direct tax, rupees. So that is one figure that they have got. The second figure the finance minister is sold, 30%. Now you have to match this figure with 30%. You cannot make people to earn what you want as income. The third figure in this mathematical formula, income into 30% is equal to tax that has to be collected in the budget. So two figures the finance minister has decided. So his people told him, bureaucrats, sir, okay, now you have done that, let us decide what is income. You understand, if you look at those 7% rate of interest cases, I have seen those. What they really do is they say, we will not give you credit for your repayments, we will not do this. So they change the principal amount. The same way what the government is doing is, this is where is tax terror, that they said in 2005, we are stuck to 30%. We have to increase the collection of revenue as per budget. So the third factor that can change is income. The third factor that can change is income, and that is where they are making all the changes, or they increase the other taxes. So what was 7.5% MAT became 18.5%. What was DDT's lower rate has now become 19.98. You increase the taxes there. Be transparent. You're talking to your citizens. You are not able to afford 30%. Please say we'll charge 40%, but please stop all these games. One side you're giving me 3580, the next side you say no, but you'll have to pay AMT on this. What is the sense in this? As well, don't give me. You are making a clue that we want to give a fillip to the economy, so 30% depreciation. Having done that, immediately you turn around and you say no, your AMT will be paid. So what you got is only 11.5% benefit. So do that, no? Say that very clearly, transparently. Why do you cheat me? Why do you compute your income the way? Now what is income computation and disclosure standards? What happened was, Gautam mentioned to this, what has happened is that suddenly SEBI and Income Tax Department said that no, we'll have our own standards. They are not happy with the institute standard. Not happy means what? They are not happy with the income determined by those institute standards. It is not that they have got some problem with the standard. Please understand this. There is no problem with the standard. The problem is the income determined by the standard, because now that is the only flexible figure they have. See, look at it this way. You have decided 30%. You have decided the figure of collection of taxes. So now what is left out is income of the SSCs. So now you are not happy with what is the income determined. So you said, I want to do it. So they had few chartered accountants and everybody. And they realized that how will you have 3 sets of accounts? One is for SEBI. SEBI also is toying with this idea. So your SSC will maintain 3 sets of accounts simultaneously. One is for SEBI. One is for Income Tax Department, and third is, he mentioned IFRS, maybe fourth, and really what is the real sense of income, nobody knows. So they said, let us do this income computation, and this is something again an import from the DTC. If you must have seen DTC, what they wanted was they want to classify that this is expenses, this head, this expenses, this head, this is what is going to come up. You look at DTC, you allow them to make this amendment, that is what is going to happen, is that they are going to decide everything. You will have to literally maintain books, as Gautam said, as per their standards, but they are not going to say so in so many words. They are going to ensure it indirectly. Why you want to do this? What is income is known commercially, that is what courts have been holding time and again. So if some decision went against you, well, went against you because you wrongly interpreted what is income. You want to decide what is my income, that is something, very crude language I will use this. This is something like you appoint somebody from Dubai as a finance minister. What he has to do is just make a call, itna paisa do, paisa hai, nahi hai, this, that is none of my business. This is tax terror. Why? Who are you to decide my income? You can decide the income tax, decide the rate, make it 40, make it 50, say it transparently. Don't say 30 and then change the income computation rules by saying tax accounting standards. Then CSR is a joke on all of us. CSR is a joke on all of us. What they are saying, CSR is an application of income. Very good. So my income, I decide where I spend it. At the most, my wife decides. I think that is what Paras applies, so I should clarify. 2 people can decide where I spend my money, right? Either me or my wife. Now, who is the government to decide 2% you are going to spend on CSR? Application of income. See, understand, they are not saying it is expense or a company. They are saying it is application of your income. Tomorrow they will have a law in DDT that 2% CSR was your application of income. If you would have distributed to shareholders, government would have received 20% DDT. So CSR you also pay DDT because it is application of income. How can you have something which is compulsory on me and then you still say it is application? You should have the audacity to do this. One side you make it compulsory, the same government, other side says, no, this is application of income. I am very much thankful to them for deciding how to spend the income. This is where I would say this is a terror, that you are deciding what is my income. You are deciding where I spend money and then say, no, that is not a tax deductible expense. The third, 269 SS they came up with RTGS. They have 40A3. You know that? Now 40A3, how they fooled us? The law came in 1969, 40A3. 1969 to 1995, we had a law which said 100% disallowable, but we had clause 6J of 6DD. We said that if you satisfy the AO about the payee who has received this money, I can give you that. Please go and tax him. Don't disallow. They said yes, perfect. 95, they said no, there is a lot of litigation on this issue. What's the problem? Your AO should not litigate anyway. So they said, what we'll do, we'll remove J and we'll do it 20% for you. This is 96 to 2007. So we agreed foolishly, we never realized that litigation is going on, 20% is okay. 2007 they decide now, yes, is the time. So they said 100% disallowance. So 40A3, now you have 100% disallowance without that 6DDJ. A. B. How it is terror? You say that we are not able to get a large number of small people in the text net. I have myself handled this and I have seen this happening in lot many other smaller businesses in this country. A milk seller's case I had in Pune Tribunal. Tribunal was good enough to some way find a way to give him exemption out. He got out, but legally he was not out. What happens? He decided that to buy a house, he was having a jopri, he decided let me buy a house. So the cooperative bank said you have to file your return. So he filed his return for 3 years. His return, nothing, no wrong. Every day, morning and evening, twice a day, the milk van used to come to supply the milk to him. The same van, in the evening when he is going back, would collect the day's collection from him. So in his books of accounts, there is cash sales and there is cash purchases. What it ensured was that assessment, that person realized in lifetime, I am not going to see income tax department again. You have terrorized him. How can one single person you can do this? The same thing they did with 40A1A. We have been chambers, I think we had a few people, I can't see Gopal here. CBDT, when this 40A1A came, the next year we told them, sir, it is very harsh because in case of contractors, and it has happened. He has 1,000 rupees collection. 97 or 96 rupees is his payment, purchase, contract payments. 4 rupees is his gross profit, 1 rupee is his net profit. You disallow 40A1A because he is not deducted tax. So 1,000 rupees, gross receipt 3, your tax demand 290 rupees. Or 290 rupees is a tax demand. They said, what problem you have, the SSCs have no problem with 40. These are the words they threw at us. Then what is your problem with 40A1A? Now what is 40A1A? It became a tool for tax collection. What are you? It is not your business to decide my income. Is it my income? No. You still collect tax, you raise a demand, it's a different thing somewhere or other. Most people have been able to scrape through, but at what price? What business you have to decide my income this manner? 40A3, you may decide. You tell me, yes, tell me the person who took the money from you. You have the own resources, go and catch him. Why do you want me to suffer for that cash payment? You know the amendment in 260 SS will trigger a 40A3 war on you. Because RTGS has been exempted there for a different reason actually, but it has been exempted. Now what about ITGS payments you make for your purchases? I think Tatas and Ambanis and Reliance must be making everything by RTGS. So next year their gross receipts is going to be their gross income. Because 40A3 everything will be disallowed. You made RTGS, you made any NEFT. Credit card payments are not covered here. This is a problem I face every time. Personally, because I keep on thinking that whenever my car repair bill exceeds 20,000, I start thinking that if I not make a cash payment, he will never accept a check from me because he doesn't know me. He is only going to insist on a credit card payment or a cash payment. If I make a cash payment, they are going to disallow it. That person is not going to accept check from me. He doesn't know me. He cannot afford every day evening if he is repairing 40 cars, 50 cars, a repair station. I pay by credit card. Credit card is violating. If they want to come down to it, 40A3, they will disallow your credit card payment, they will disallow RTGS, they will disallow NEFT. Don't check small problems, look at the larger problem. What business you have to decide this? We had clause J. Clause J said, I have to tell you who the person took the money. That is sufficient. Why should you be deciding what I do? I think this is also terror. Also, the way they do it. Capital gains. One good amendment, 45(5), he has already explained, I will not touch with it. Good, they did it because it was unnecessarily creating litigation. Why should a person pay? But there is one more issue there. You look at section 45(1), it says capital gains shall be deemed to be income of the year of transfer. That is, irrespective of the year of receipt and all that, the moment there is transfer, capital gains arises. Now you deem transfer. So there was already a deeming provision that the moment there is a transfer, there is income. Now you deem what is transfer. It has happened in quite a few development cases, development rights agreement cases, that before a person has received a single rupee, they charge him capital gains on that. Because They deemed transfer, so far so good, but you at least have a law which says that when I deem transfer, I will not deem income. I will look at whether he has received the money. So you deem income, then you also deem transfer. This is preponement of income, and in a situation where there is no provision for bad debt. So if you don't receive money, there is no bad debt. Even if there is bad debt, there should be some capital gains to claim that, no? So really, it is a really terror provision. You want to tax me when I get the money. How can you tax me before that? 54, it is funny, really funny. Even 50C. Why 50C is there? Because there is cash transaction. Why cash transaction? Even just 3 years back, Supreme Court in Surat Lamb's case, 3 years or 4 years back, Supreme Court in Surat Lamb's case said the problem of unaccounted money in immobile property transactions is because of the state laws dealing with stamp duty. Please solve that, there will be no cash transaction. This is what Supreme Court is telling you. You don't want to do that. You want to bring in 50C. The same way 54 problem is you have local laws relating to all those nonsenses. So builder is ending up creating flats of 1000 square feet on paper. Actually your flat will be 4000 square feet. He has created a flat of 1000, he is going to give you 4 agreements. And that major cases, I'm not standing for cases of Pune, Bombay, there could have been. But cases of one house, you are rather perpetuating litigation rather than solving it. By just saying one house, now who will decide one house? Again this issue will come up. Give them those exemptions or you change your local laws. Why are you harassing the SSE? Ultimately, same government is doing it. We dealt with DDT. Very interesting, I would say, TDS. I'll give an example of last year. TDS credit, we already dealt with 40A1A. All sort of conditions they put on you. You have interest, you have penalty, you have prosecution, you have disallowance under 40A1A. For what? Not tax on your own income, but because you are foolish enough to earn taxable income. Sometimes, really, as a joke, I look at it that in fact, if all of us are fools, what we should be doing is stop our activities, go and register ourselves in a rural area for Manarega, 100 days employment, 100 days money. There is right to education, so your children will have quality education. You decide the school, they have to give you admission. If you are not a poor person, you cannot do it. You will be fighting, you will be running after trustees. But if you are poor, you decide the school, you will get it. And third is food security, you will have the nutritious food. Why are we foolishly doing all this, earning income, paying tax? So far so good, now we are going to pay TDS. And TDS what? The moment there is a default, you are going to face interest, going to face penalty, and you are going to face prosecution. And prosecution is launched at the drop of a hat for TDS violations. They don't do it for others, but they do it for TDS violations. I don't know whether you have this experience, but I have seen TDS violations very common. They will launch prosecution. Last year they were falling short of revenue targets, so they said we are launching prosecution or you compound. Idea was you collect compounding fees, it is money for the government. So this is how they terrorize you with TDS. Why should I be doing it? It's an onerous responsibility on me. Why should I be doing it? Now what they do, having beaten a person to collect the TDS, they have collected it, they have eaten it. Now you say, sir, my credit. They said, what credit? Kaun sa paisa? They had Delhi High Court last year because there is no credit. I am giving my example, personal, not client. In last 5 years, 1 year I had a demand notice, 143(1)(a), 16 lakhs. Then it came down, 50,000, 30,000, every year 15, 20,000 I am paying. Every year notice of demand ranges from 2 lakhs, 1 lakh, 50,000 credit. But these are examples, normal. There is no law to deal with a special circumstance. See, if I am taking somebody's money, this is what my parents have taught, this is what all of us, our parents have taught us. That if you look at a 10 rupee note here, you are going to pick it up, yes, you are going to find out to whom it belongs. You find there, you don't know who it belongs, what you are going to do is put it in a temple box or something or give it to a poor. What does the government do? They have collected the money like this. I'll give a classic example of last year. Touch wood, because of the right places that we touched, that the government has instructed the AO to do something about it. But I'll tell you, legally, there is no provision. There is a lady writer who found that a book has been plagiarized by a television serial producer. She filed a complaint with the Writers Association. The Writers Association and the Producers Association have an apex body of arbitrators. So it was referred to arbitration of that apex body. Arbitration took place and they said, producer sir, you have to pay X amount. I'm saying 10 lakhs at present. So producer said, okay, I have to pay 10 lakhs. So it paid 10 lakhs rupees to that apex body. So it deducted tax from in the name of that apex body. The apex body took 10 lakhs less 10%, so 9 lakhs, gave it to the Writers Association. Writers Association took that 9 lakhs and gave it to the writer. Now how do I file a return? Where is that 1 lakh rupees? If the apex body of that people are going to ask for it, they cannot get credit because they are not showing 10 lakhs in the return. There is no provision for the apex body to get that credit of 1 lakh rupees. And this lady writer, can she get it now? The TDS certificate is not her name. The producer has not paid the money to her. The check has come in the name of apex. This is the law, my friends. This is the law. Yes, department is doing, we put up representation and something has come up. Till date has not happened, but yes, at least they are saying sympathetic, we want to do something about it. But how many cases? There is no law. So are you going to take away all this money just without ever thinking whereby this money has come to me? This is terror. This is terror. One side you are going to say give me TDS. Other side when it comes to credit, I am not going to give it. There is one provision where we need to make a strong presentation while they are listening. As I said again, while they are listening, make a strong representation. Along with that Vodafone amendment, maybe 1 or 2 small amendments for poor residents will also come in for doing it. Now cost of compliance. Again, I am going to small things fast. Only one thing, all of you will tell me that I am wrong because you have suffered this, I only heard about it. 2003, they come up with computerization. For whose benefit? They say my benefit. Anyway, they do it. 2003, TDS returns are computerized. 2006, return of incomes are computerized. Every year we had glitches. Last year, some CA just yesterday said, you're talking on tax terrorism, so I'll share this example with you. He said in 2013, they said Form 3CD also computerized. And between the months of July, correct me if I'm wrong, they said within the months of July and September, there were 10 versions. Now really what happens, because I am not even computer savvy, so he explained to me what happens. You download the form. You save it and you start filling up. You find 2 details are not available, so you call the client, you work on it. After 2 days when you try to upload it, that version has gone. So you have to enter the data again. Now who spares this? Why do you do this? 2003 to 2014, 11 years computerization, you are doing it, you are not able to solve your problems, and you have compounded the problems of TDS credits. In fact, earlier life was much simpler with physical TDS certificates that the AOs and the commissioners were, that lady's example I gave, I assure you if it was before computerization that those people would have sat down, taken a few letters from the associations and the producers and passed an order giving her the credit. Today it can't happen because it has to happen at Bangalore. Bangalore doesn't have eyes and ears. So computerization is not helping me, but you are making me toil for that. Why? Just because I am a poor taxpayer of this country, you are going to make me do this. I am sorry, I am not going to take up this responsibility on your behalf. Domestic transfer pricing. The most laughable thing I have ever seen is domestic transfer pricing. Yes, there can be domestic transfer pricing. Even between 2 associate enterprises of the same country, there can be reasons for domestic transfer pricing. But by under Income Tax Act, both the SSCs are under your jurisdiction, taxing here or taxing here. Why do you want domestic transfer pricing? The 3 or 4 instances that were there, you had the possibility to tax it in India. Ultimately, why you need a provision for taxing in India? That can be done. Both the SSCs are in your jurisdiction. What is the purpose of domestic transfer pricing? What is the cost that the SSC incurs? You have your audit reports and your data and all that. Crucial, one very interesting thing. You look at section 139. 139, the legislature gives power to the department, to the CBDT, to call for as much information as it wants. It's written there in 139, all those subsections. If you read it, they have widest power. They can ask for anything. They can ask for the size of your shirt also. So they can do it. What they do is, they put a bar. You cannot give information which we don't want. Understand this. You try to give information which they don't want, you cannot give it. And then the moment there is some addition, they will levy penalty for concealment of facts. Legislature says, please go ahead and ask for everything that you want, satisfy yourself, there should be no problem. You say, no, I don't want information. But don't show me. I'll make an additional levy penalty on you. Why? There is a total disconnect between these 2 provisions. There has to be, you have to implement this. This is also tax terror, 139 and 2. I don't say don't levy penalty on concealment cases. Gautam referred to it, but this again Yesterday a friend helped me with this. There are 6 items where there is retrospective amendment, and that is not because of the politician. The politician poor doesn't know. 6 places, why retrospective? They are applicable from AY 15-16. So it applies to transactions from 1st April till the date of your budget. They are retrospective. Gautam mentioned also, I am just mentioning there are 6 of them. Section 242A relating to period of holding short term. Section 51 advance receipts. Third is TDS where you are liable now for all provisions. Fourth is 54-54F. Again it is retrospective effect. 54 EC 10 lakhs and CSR also is a retrospective amendment. Now few minutes here before we go, because they always say we amend the law because we don't get confirmations from appeals. Now this is a constant thing that comes up. So we'll go to reasons why this is happening. The first and the foremost reason that I could see is there is a absence of political will, and there is complete abdication of the lawmaking process. You look at provisions of 1960s, you look up books, you'll find that CBDT has issued a circular on the basis of a question asked in the House. The politician there, MP, has asked a question, and in answer FM gave a promise, and therefore he is directing the assessing officers that you are going to do this. You'll find quite a few circulars in good old days. In last 15 years, have you heard MP ever asking a single question relating to any provisions of Income Tax Act? Never. Politicians don't do it. So the bureaucrats have a free hand. They have things they were going to make easy because they have to collect tax. The second is the politician was sold out to the rate of 30%. I would say be prepared. We should tell the government, make it 40 and make these amendments. It is easier for us. We know what we are doing. Don't fool us by saying 30 and then make us pay tax of 45%. So be prepared next year. It may happen if the government has the will to look at it in the larger perspective, that 30% has to go, that fixation has to go. You need more taxes, increase the rate, but don't change my income. The third is failure to investigate. What the department does, because that we see daily, they keep on believing that the moment they have a confession of the SSC, they have won. So they will not investigate further. So most of the cases they lose. Or they fail because they do too many cases. If, for example, and this I was talking to some very senior officer only, that if Preet Bharara, who is a famous advocate in New York, was to come to India, he would have failed. Reason? He has to do only a few cases, selected cases there, insider trading or the maid's problem of this. Few, they don't do every day. Here what the Income Tax Department does, they file thousands of cases on TDS violations. And therefore your courts are clogged up, you find that then you will say that it's not happening. Select your cases. They don't want to do it because that is how they hide. That is how they hide their own incompetence, and that is by hiding it beyond doing too many things. Sure, we are doing it, but not happening. And the last, I would say, that is where we all have contributed. We professionals have also. In 80s, especially after 84, there was a very big thought going on in this country, everywhere, that if a discretion is given to a government officer, it means corruption. This was a common formula that we all thought, that if there is a discretion, it means corruption.
The use of word may.
Pardon?
The use of word may in the act.
So, most places we have this going away. Rules 48.3 is because of this discretion with tomorrow there will be money. We have 234B mandatory. What has happened, Corruption has increased more because now there is no discretion except the discretion to ignore. Earlier, he had a discretion, 48.3 disallowance to do or not to do. Now what he will say, see, this is happening, but it is not there in audit report. So I have also not seen it. So you tell me whether I have seen it or not. It becomes much more difficult because now we really don't know what is happening. It has gone opaque. You have pushed it backwards. Discretion doesn't mean corruption. Corruption happens because of lack of values, not for any other reason. You give as much discretion as you want, but if that person has values, there is not going to be corruption. You give him no discretion, still there will be corruption because still he can do it because he doesn't have values. So we need to change. Here I would say we, including me, we all used to think discretion means corruption. You can look at a list of such provisions where discretion went away because even SSCs or the professional bodies were telling the government, remove the discretion, that is the root cause of corruption, remove the discretion. We were wrong. Discretion doesn't mean that. Please bring at discretion because that gives a tempering hand wherever required. If there is a discretion with the commissioner or the AO, he is going to say, no, I'm not going to make this 40A1 disallowance. Just because it has happened, I am assessing to your income which is impossible and not do it. But today he doesn't have discretion, so he has sympathy. He calls up people like us, many people like us who do appeal work and says, please sir, uska kaam free mein kar dena because he is badly hit. I couldn't help it, I had to make the assessment. This is what the assessing officers tell us. He says, please do something for him. Appeal fees he'll manage, but his appearance fees and all that you do it for us. Why it is happening? Because that poor fellow doesn't have the discretion now. You're taken away the discretion. So I think discretion has to be there. That is where really major change will come in. Well friends, some of my thoughts on tax terror. Surely lot of other thoughts would be there, what really amounts to tax terror. But I would request both the institutions to take this up with the government that okay, you're talking of tax terror, please stop Vodafone, please stop 918, but these are the poor resident Indians, these are the tax terror provisions, why they are tax terror, please do something about that. Collect your taxes, I'm not saying no. Collect your taxes, but do something, make it in a human manner. This is not the way you're going to collect taxes. Thank you friends, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chetan, for enlightening us on the tax terror. I must thank the organizers, that is CTC and WIRC, for organizing this terror speech on tax terror by Chetan. Only thing is that these two organizations, they have made a very serious mistake of not sending a mail to two persons. One is PM and the other is FM. Otherwise, probably they would have been here to listen to him. Now, this mistake could be rectified only by one way of organizing a presentation by Chetan to both these two persons, PM and FM. Let us hope that will be organized, and I'm told at least PM he is used to such type of studentship in the right sense and a good sense. Whatever new that is coming to him, I'm told that he sits as a student and tries to learn. And let us hope that Chetan will do it. I'm not going to do it. Chamber and Institute will do it. No, making them learn, what I say is. I'm not, though it is in a lighter vein, but what we found with the presentation from Gautam and what we have been hearing, that basically this government has an intention to do something good as compared to the earlier one. And even these provisions which have come, maybe our way of looking at that is still that it is good way of looking at it, whatever it may be, that they have an intention to make that come back to get out of the tax terrorism, whatever he has mentioned, by way of bringing the provisions, or otherwise today, I think if I am not wrong, in the recent past, administratively tax terrorism is more than the terrorism in the provisions. Because all these reopenings, etc., even for 5,000 rupees, just mechanically, at least I have come across some cases which are patently wrong. So that tax terrorism is much more, and for that purpose I think a feedback is required to these two persons, PM and FM. Probably we hope that they will do something on that. Now, after going to a much higher level taken by Chetan to us, I think we have to come back before we go out to the lower level of finance bill, what our Gautam had taken us. And I may have to say something because I will not be authorized to take it away. One thing which tax terrorism word has been used in one concept, apart from a number of aspects which have been there, is retrospective liability. A retrospective undeserving liability, and that is what the FM has said. And there, when we look at finance bill or a finance act or income tax act, we consider the retrospective amendments. Now, retrospective amendment or prospective amendment will be on the basis of the wordings, number one, and the specific provision which says this provision will be applicable from particular date or particular assessment year. And prima facie, having a look to all these, except for those provisions which said that it is applicable from assessment year, that is financial year, the current financial year itself, may be retrospective or may not be retrospective, we'll have to see. We have to look at, which I would try to bring you back to the normal stage, try to understand how exactly we look at it, because ultimately the courts will interpret what is the intention of the legislature. Here the question is whether the FM speech saying that we do not want to do a retrospective liability which amounts to tax terrorism. I'm using these words specifically in a proper sense because there are retrospective amendments. Let us have a look to it. And retrospectivity is looked at, one, specifically mentioning that it is applicable from a particular year, prior year. Retrospectivity comes by way of a clarificatory amendment. Now whether it is clarificatory or otherwise will have to be seen from the drafting of the wordings. Now one more thing which I have found from the drafting, as Gautam also mentioned, every time we try to give them a liberty by saying, or rather excuse by saying they got only 49 days or 45 days and therefore excuses. Whatever it may be, but ultimately the court is going to read the provision. Court will never see whether it is 45 days or 145 days. Now from that point of view, I was trying to look at yesterday, and the first provision which Gautam and Chetan has also referred to is section 54 and 54F. I'm only trying to understand how these wordings will come. Now in that, section does not say anything. The provision which is amended specifically says it is applicable for the assessment year 15-16 onwards. This, going with the finance minister's speech, it clearly means that it is not applicable for the prior years. Now what is the dispute? A residential house means one residential house or more than one residential house. Now this dispute the legislature has intended to resolve by saying it is one, again by saying it is applicable for assessment year 15-16 onwards. Now the first implication of it is the legislature does not intend it to be applicable for the prior years, which is quite clear. How the courts will take it. The FM also said for the past years let the court decide. Now that is also not so fair. Again, for the past years, should the litigation continue, or the department should say no, for the past years we will accept that it is more than one. That does not happen with the department as if the trend exists. The terrorism is many a times, even if where there is a very clear case, the departmental advocate comes and argues so many nonsenses. At least this thing has increased rather these days, which was not earlier. Earlier at least we used to find sometimes someone says no, this is the thing. Today also we have very few people on the department doing that part. Otherwise the advocate speaks on what commissioner has directed. Court has to ask the advocate, what is your view? Not the commissioner's view. You tell me whether this is correct or that is correct. You are here to assist the court, not the commissioner. In fact, this is the type of terrorism which has developed. That also should go. And if this is what the department has the stand, all right, for the past years, let us not take the debate further or litigation further and accept it wherever it is possible. Let us hope after a presentation by Chetan to our PM and FM, this also will be taken care. And I am not, though it is in the lighter vein, but it is also material. Because that will also make a lot of difference. Because unwarranted litigation could go. Because once your intention is clear, Now, what is that, the difference? What is the difference between these two? What was earlier possible debate? The earlier possible debate was whether a means one or more than one. One view taken is that singular means plural, and therefore, even if it is more than one, you will be entitled to benefit. The new one, which provides it is from 1516, restricts to one, means for the earlier years, the government has no difficulty. How the courts will have to look at? The courts will have to look at, so far as A has two views possible, then the view which is in favor of the department, SSC, will have to be accepted by the court at least after this amendment, which the government is aware that there are two views possible, and therefore hereafter they do not want that two views, one only. For the past they will allow. What does it mean? That means more than one house, and even in this one house or more than one house, I think Karnataka High Court and Delhi or one or two high courts have held that if it is in a same building, more than one flat is there, it has to be considered as one house. Now this debate may continue, but at least where a case is one residential family house, whether two adjacent flats or one above the other is concerned, I think there should not be any difficulty, whether it is for the past or the future. Whether it is for the past or the future, when it is one unit, rather one unit or a flat is not the question. One residential house is the question. So many a times you may not get what you want. So you have to, I think 120 ITR Calcutta and then Supreme Court is there, where you have purchased a house and constructed an additional floor. You are entitled to the whole. In a similar way, you purchase two adjacent flats and make it one, the whole will be available. I don't think there should be any difficulty, where the legislative intention is also clear on that. Now here
If it two doors in that house.
rather I would say there may be two doors, one bungalow can have 2 or 5 doors also. But the question is a question of fact, whether you are using it as one residential house or not. Again, that point is also, you might retain 2 kitchens in the 2 flats, but use at one house. Suppose you have one ration card. I think that will prove. It's a question of fact whether it is a one house or not. Whether you break the wall, you do not break the wall, how much you break the wall, all these are facts which will have to be considered. Now one thing which I have a little difficulty, in the memo explaining these provisions, the benefit was intended for investment in one residential house in India. It says the legislative intent was this from beginning. Now whether this particular memo will create any problem for us by saying that it is retrospective, my answer is no in this particular case. Though it has been mentioned here in the memorandum, this was the intention. Now I would go with the FM speech plus the clear provision which says it will be prospective. That means even with this intention, you have now come to the conclusion that it cannot be so for the past, so you have rectified it. Now I go to the next one, 54 EC. For 54 EC, the memo again says, the wordings of the proviso have created an ambiguity. Whether this will again make it retrospective. In my view, again going to the specifics saying that it is from particular assessment year plus the FM speech will not work, make it retrospective. The next provision is section 45. There also the memo says there is ambiguity about the year of taxing. Many a times we make use of the memorandum to find out whether it is clarificatory otherwise. The question would again come here whether it is retrospective. In my view, that is again not retrospective, because again go to the provision which says. And the last, I'm sorry, the one more before. Now there are two things. One more thing, whether section 45, again I will have a slightly reservation. Section 45, that change is to bring a clarity as regards the year of taxing, and it is to the benefit of the SSE. In such a situation, there is a possibility that it will be taken as retrospective. See, there are types of amendments: clarificatory to get rid of impossibility, absurdity. Rather absurdity, when I take it, I go to the next one, 269 SS, which Chetan and they have already seen, where a banking transaction through electronic media, which was again a question of technical issue, whether 269 SS will be applicable in such a case. The memorandum says in the present times many banking transactions takes place by way of internet banking facility. Now that means the restriction was not for a technical wordings only. The restriction was with reference to the banking transactions. And this was creating a hardship. Secondly, it was a case of absurdity, because without this amendment, that particular provision, so far as the electronic transactions are concerned, it would have been an absurdity. It has been rectified again prospectively. Whether such a provision will have to be treated as retrospective, in my view it has to be treated as retrospective. Similarly, where it is a hardship, it has to be treated as retrospective. To remove a hardship, it will be treated as retrospective. And last, which I am coming to, is the amendment to section 37(1) by way of explanation 2. Now here is one difficulty. That explanation starts with the words, "For the removal of doubts, it is hereby declared that." There is one. Now this is what the discrepancy which is there in the new bill. As rightly said, the FM did not get time to have a look to it in spite of being an advocate. That's the reason these type of things have come. After Chetan gives the presentation, I hope that these things will not be there. Now therefore here also the difficulty comes. A very interesting thing which I was trying to read that section. Then I of course read the explanation 1, the existing explanation also. It is read in the same manner. But I would like to take only 2 minutes for that, because it will make a lot of difference. First of all, but for this provision, that CSR expenditure, is it not a business expenditure? Is it a deemed business expenditure? At least it is not a deemed business expenditure. It is a normal business expenditure because it is a statutory liability for carrying on that business. And I think we have understood law very well. If it is statutory liability, there cannot be any debate that it is business expenditure or not a business expenditure. It is clearly a business expenditure. Clause 13. Yes. It is clause 13, and the memo also says it is an application of income. And the clause 13 which reads, it says, shall not be deemed to be an expenditure incurred by the SSC for the purposes of business or profession. I was independently reading it without that explanation 1. Explanation 1 is in respect of an expenditure which amounts to offense. Normally a prejudice is always there, courts always try to decide against the SSC in such a prejudiced manner. Here it is an expenditure which is very difficult or rather impossible to say it is not a business expenditure. It is the law which provides that if you want to do this business, you have to incur this expenditure. Again, it is for the public benefit. As Chetan pointed out, that it is the government which should have done. Government wants them to share their expenditure and makes it compulsory that you should, if you want to do business, you have to incur this. So there can be one main provision which says the following expenditures will be deemed to be business expenditure which are otherwise not. And then comes a proviso, however, the following will not be deemed to be an expenditure. I'll take a slightly different drafting, that this expenditure will be deemed to be not a business expenditure. If what was intended by the legislature is to be given effect to, these wordings are not fit. These wordings are only applicable where otherwise this expenditure comes in a deeming provision which says an expenditure which is otherwise not a business expenditure is deemed to be a business expenditure, and proviso to it saying that however this expenditure will not be deemed to be a business expenditure. Otherwise, simply saying will not be deemed to be a business expenditure has no meaning, no effect, because under the general main this thing itself, general concept itself, it is an expenditure for the purposes of business. I go to the extent of saying that the court, if it considers this line, may even go to this extent, only the hardship for the court will be explanation 1, which uses the similar words. Because that is the other situation, because many a times we say a good case makes a good law, bad case makes a bad law. And this is the difference between explanation 1 and explanation 2, but with the same drafting. It's something which is absurd after saying so much, just for a small amount, the government is trying to introduce such type of thing. Secondly, the explanatory note says, refers to that the SSC will be entitled to deduction under section 30 to 36. It is not coming under the section, the amended provision. Then I don't know how the department will apply that. Next one I have to consider, of course that is again pointed out by Chetan. Chetan said, saying that the government should say, I would rather say the courts will have to say. And that is, when the question of section 14A applicability for dividend which is received where it is dividend tax is being paid, we have argued the case by saying that the whole scheme from day one it was taxable here because the government felt they will be better off by doing it other way around, the tax is collected. Then the court said, no, the liability is not on that income of the dividend receiver. It is a liability on the company. Now with this explanation, the same argument which we are taking, that the courts will have to take a different view. Only for the future. Because of the past, that was not clear whether it is a tax on that dividend which is to be paid to me, or on that income which will be given by way of dividend. Now the government says, no, it is a tax on the dividend which has to be paid to me. And if so, it has incurred the tax. It has been made liable to the tax. So this argument, I think, will come once again, and the courts might hold in favor of the SSC. Well, I think there is a very short of time. Only thing about section 10, 11 and 12A and 12AA. Whatever the discrepancies which have been brought by Gautam, I do not want to repeat. Those I think will have to be, representation should go, because those are many such type of discrepancies which prima facie, at least with our belief that those are unintended, this government does not want to do such type of things. So those representations may be of some use. Because particularly, say for example, section 11, section 12A, registration is in effect. And if I am not entitled to exemption under section 11, in that year at least I must be entitled to the 10 exemptions. Obviously that cannot be an intention to make me penalize me. The intention is that, in fact, when you are getting a full benefit of exemption under section 11 by way of an investment or application of income, why do you have to be given another small pocket? That may be the intention. But however, it is resulting in an unintended consequence of just denying those exemptions even when the section 11 exemption has been denied. Similarly, section 1023C, such provisions are there. I think your time is over. So this would be, I don't think anything more if I have to speak. Only on those section 11, 12, 12A, etc. a lot many things could be spoken, because the concept particularly under 12A and 12AA, a very, very confusing concept. In the recent past, the difficulties are faced because it's not clear as to what is a relationship for granting a registration and the defaults, refusing the registration and the defaults, cancellation of the registration and the defaults. Say for example, I have made an application for registration. You will look at my application maybe 5 years back, it is pending, and this year you may find some fault. Can you refuse me registration for the earlier 4 years? That will be unfair. Similarly, my registration is 20 years back. You find one fault in the last year. Can you cancel registration for 20 years backwards? There is no practice of cancellation with effect from a particular year. It's not clear as to from which date the cancellation effects. All these things are required to be considered. All these things are required to be represented. Then only that concept of terror also will be taken care. Well, friends, I thank the organizers for, in fact, especially the analysis which Gautam has done. I have learned a lot along with you. Chetan's presentation, there is a lot for us to learn, lot for the government to learn. With these two, if the government, I'm even told that recently, because the government is serious about such things. Let us hope even 50% seriousness is effected. It will be a great achievement. So let us hope the organizations will make a proper representation and all these aspects are taken care. Thank you very much. Thanks. Sorry.
Friends, we are running short of time, so I will be just, in a one-day match, if you want to win, you need a solid foundation at the beginning. And then towards the end, you need some firing. We had both. We had Gautam Bhai, who has, like Virat Kohli, laid a very good foundation for the whole finance bill, which was explained in a very, very simple and lucid manner. And towards the end, we had someone like Yusuf Pathan or Yuvraj Singh in the form of Chetan Bhai, who has probably hit the final six to win the match. The stalwart of Indian cricket team, Sachin Tendulkar, is retired now. But we were fortunate enough to have a stalwart in the form of Shri Bhujle Sahab, whose presence itself is inspirational and throws many doors open. With this, sir, the thanks are definitely due to them, and we all are requested to wait for a while. I request Mr. Dinesh Poddar to propose a well-deserved vote of thanks to all of them.
Sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to me to propose a vote of thanks at this occasion. We are grateful to Shri Keshav Bhujle sir for chairing the session and giving his valuable views on the Finance Bill 2014. We express our sincere thanks to Shri Gautam Nayak for dealing section by section wise analysis of direct tax amendment made by the Finance Bill 2014. We are thankful to Shri Chetan Karya for handling the terrorism by taxmen very tactfully. With this, sir, I will like to add that Aap Sabka Saath has made today Hamara Sabka Vikas. I, on behalf of Chamber of Tax Consultant and WIRC, ICI and members present here, propose a very hearty vote of thanks and request you all to carry out the law.
Thank you.
मालूम पति गया था आज टाइम में बोलना जरूरी